What up, Wizards? It's Dev. SBMTG, we like it in Magic, and I haven't slept since the last video I uploaded, but that's okay. Because Wizards decided to finally just dump the whole entire rest of the set on us all at one time this morning. There's like 70 cards from earlier today that we could go over, but the problem is that most of them are garbage. They're just crap on a crap cracker. They're not very good. Most of them aren't even necessarily draft worthy. Now, if you want to, I got a link in the description. You can go to Mythic Spoiler. You can check out every single card that was released today. But what I've done, so I don't lose my mind entirely, is just selected 20 of the most interesting or powerful, or in a lot of cases both, cards to go over from the dump today. But before we get to the cards, just because it's the last video of spoiler season, I want to go ahead and pitch to you now while we're at the beginning of the video and you're still watching it. So make sure you like and subscribe. Do all that stuff. We got the top 10 sleepers, top 25 cards, deck techs, and all that stuff coming up real soon. So you want to be subbed for that. And if you have time after that, do any of this stuff. Tomorrow night on Twitch, Saturday night for reference, I have for some reason tasked myself with rating every single card in the whole set, because I'm an idiot. I don't know why I'm doing that. I think it's just my last big, like, final boss no sleep challenge to completely obliterate what's left of my sanity. Check me out if you want to see a man slowly unravel what's left of his mind. But aside from that, you can check me out on Patreon. $1 a month is all I ask to vote on what decks we do first, and it helps support the channel for really, really cheap. And, you know, paying my bills really helps bring back what I have left of my mind. So do all that stuff if you can, and let's go ahead and get to the cards, because there's actually some really good stuff for a last day dump. Now, I guess it wouldn't be an SBMTG list video without a stupid honorable mention that I like for no reason. This one's no different. So if I had to pick one card from today that I know is not very good at all, but yet I still like just because I'm interested in it and I think it's cool, it's Cathar's Call. Easy call, as a matter of fact. This is a sweet little card. 3 mana, 2 and a white for an aura that enchants a creature. Enchanted creature has vigilance, and at the beginning of your end step, create a 1/1 white human creature token. So 3 mana is kind of a lot for an aura. You can get blown out, just like, you know, all the usual complaints against auras are valid here. And it's also really slow. I mean, it only really gives you a 1/1 every turn, which isn't really that much, but you don't really see these auras that do something, you know, completely outside the box like this. Like, I don't know that we've ever seen an aura that just gives you a creature every turn, although we almost certainly have. But either way, just a really sweet, cool little card here that, even though I'm pretty sure it's just god-awful, it's not very good at all, actually, I'm allowed to like it. That's my line on it. Dang it, I'm allowed to like this card. I think it's cool. Even though I don't really want this to be a numbered list, I guess number 20 would be Bat Whisperer. This is kind of an honorable mention too, because I mostly like the flavor here, but there are actually cool things to like about this in Limited. This is 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 4/2 vampire. And when an ETBs, if an opponent lost life this turn, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. I am really starting to hate this clause between commas, that if an opponent lost life this turn, just really hurts a lot of these cards. But still, if this does make you the flyer, it gets you 5 power and stats on 2 bodies for 4 mana, and like, that's pretty good, especially for a common in Limited, so I like that. And if you're behind, then maybe the 4/2 body trades with something on the ground in combat, and then the 1/1 bat like chump blocks something in the air. So you got that. But if you're ahead, I could see a situation too where your 1/1 flying bat helps proc your if an opponent lost life this turn clause. So, you know, on your other vampires. So there's some pretty cool things about this card, whether you're behind or ahead. Again, I like the stats. I like the fact that it's a board in a box, but that's actually fairly typical in the set. We've seen a bunch of cards that are creatures that come with other creatures stapled to them. So in a way, that's not even really that special in this set, and you got to work for it. So it's not the best card in the world, but it is a card that I want to point out because I kind of like it, especially in the common slot and Limited. And again, the flavor is on point. This lady just has a pet bat that she chills with, and they understand each other, and I love that. Now, there's an artifact that caught my eye today. It's Silver Bolt. This is just 1 mana for an artifact. You can pay 3 and tap it and sack it to have it deal 3 damage to target creature. If a werewolf dealt damage this way, destroy it. That's actually pretty sweet in Limited. You know, this just gives every single color, every single deck, another removal option. That's actually not that bad. 1 mana to get on the battlefield in the first place isn't much, obviously. 3 mana is kind of a lot to activate, but you can do it at instant speed. This card would suck a lot more if it was, you could only activate it as a sorcery. But at instant speed, I mean, you pay 3 mana for a removal spell unlimited, you'll do that all day. And honestly, there's not that much removal in this limited environment. And there's a ton of creatures, and I've already discussed, there's a bunch of creatures that come with creatures stapled onto them. So, like, removal is at a premium. You're going to have to be removing stuff off the battlefield. And this card actually seems like it would go in your limited deck like a good amount of the time, especially if you're in, like, green or blue or some other color that just doesn't have access to a lot of removal. This thing actually looks pretty decent. And even if you only get 1 in limited, I think you'll be more than happy playing a silver bullet copy. Hey, but let's look at Winterhorn Blessing. This is actually a card that we got to see yesterday, and it's one of the few uncommons from the last 24 hours. Most of the stuff today was common, but Winterhorn Blessing is not as good, in my opinion at least, as a lot of the commons that we saw today. This is just a green and a blue Simic mana for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature you control. Tap up to 1 target creature you don't control, and that creature freezes for a turn. You can flash this back for 1, a green and a blue, so the flashback cost isn't that much more than the initial mana cost, but I just don't think you're getting that much. Maybe the best thing about this is the flashback. Maybe it goes in, like, the Simic spell deck with, like, what is it, Dragon's Guard Elite? Like, there are places for the card, but either way, I'm just not sure that it's strong enough, even with a reasonably low flashback cost. But next is Raise the Effigy. Just 1 red mana for an instant. Choose 1, destroy target artifact or target attacking creature. Gets +2/+2 till end of turn. So I'm not sure this is actually good enough. It seems like it's almost there, but you need the right deck and the right format. You need a decent mono red deck. That's really aggressive, first of all, and cares about pumps, right? Like a deck that plays Fireblade Charger or something. So that's not unheard of. And you need a format that has a lot of artifacts in it, which I guess there's treasure tokens and, like, a couple of things. Who knows? But I'm just not sure how important the destroy target artifact mode is going to be some of the time. But I guess if you can set your opponent back a turn or get them off the Alrund's Epiphany or maybe keep them from countering a spell or something by getting rid of their treasure on your turn. Like, there are ways that this is pretty profitable, and just 1 red mana to bust an artifact at instant speed is actually a really good rate in and of itself. And when it comes stapled to a pump spell, I think that's fine. But again, I think you need a fairly artifact heavy, or at least, a format with 1 or 2 very heavily played artifacts. And you need an aggressive mono red deck that's worth something. We don't really have either right now, but do keep this, keep your mind open on this card, because again, in the right format, it could easily be worth like a 1 or 2 of in these aggressive decks. But now let's look at Homestead Courage. This card looks kind of lame, but actually it's pretty good. This is just 1 white mana for a sorcery. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains vigilance until end of turn, and you flash this back for just a single white mana too, which is key to this, because this goes in the Clever Lumomancer decks and the Clarion Spirit decks. And a lot of times those are in the same deck. So, this is great in terms of being able to cast 2 spells for Clarion Spirit. We're losing adventure creatures, and some of the adventure creatures were a great way to proc Clarion Spirit, right? And it kind of sucks to lose some of those, but instead of, I guess, like Fairy Guide Mother, now we have Homestead Courage. I guess some of these mono white decks, especially like the Lumomancer or Clarion Spirit decks and stuff, we're already playing, like, what is it, Guiding Voice or Guiding Light? I think it's Guiding Voice. That puts a +1/+1 counter on a creature at sorcery speed for 1 mana, and it learns. A lot of times you go grab, like, Environmental Sciences or something, you cast it, and that's how you get your 2 spells in a turn. Well, this is like doing that, but you get a little bit, more board presence out of it than you would out of the Guiding Voice play. But you also can do it for just 2 mana, whereas the play I just described costs 3 mana. And in some of these decks, like the Lumomancer deck, that cost reduction of 50% effectively is just incredible. So that's the card actually, I think, is better than it looks, because there are very specific white cards that really like being able to cast this twice in the same turn. But up next, I've got Geist Wave. This is 1 and a blue for an instant. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If you controlled that permanent, draw a card. This is actually kind of cool. We see people play Into the Royal sometimes in, like, blue-green or mono-blue decks, or even tempo decks, or teamer decks, rather. Some of the time I have seen it. I have, but this is actually really sweet. This is just for 2 mana, no matter when you cast it. The return a non-land permanent to its owner's hand is kind of, it's not good on its own, but like it's playable in a lot of situations. You know, it's the petty theft half of Brazen Borrower, and that's been really good at instant speed a whole lot in this format. But being able to return like your Cyclone Summoner to your hand and draw a card for just 2 mana is probably really good too. So there's a ton of creatures that you might want to return to your hand, or maybe return a Saga to your hand to reset it, right? With the 3rd chapter trigger on the stack. And return it to your hand, draw a card. Like, I don't know, it seems kind of good to me. So there's some cool things about this. Maybe if your opponent points removal at a creature, save your own guy and draw a card. Like your opponent plays a sweeper on their turn, save your guy, draw a card. Like, there's some really, really sweet things about this. And I'm not sure ultimately that it sees much play, but there are enough lines with it that in just the right deck, it could get a couple of slots. Next, we're going to look at Rotten Reunion. This is just a single black mana for an instant. Exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token with Decayed, and it flashes back for just 1 and a black, and you get that nice American Gothic reference on the artwork. That's very clever, and I love it. But I also really like this card. This is instant speed, by the way, which is really sweet. It's almost never going to be your 1-drop, unless, I don't know, your opponent cracks an Evolving Wilds on turn 1 or something. That could happen. Like an historic opponent cracks Fabled Passage on your end step, and you're like, oh, I got you. That could work, or you do it on their end step after they crack the Fabled Passage. I don't know, things like that could work, right? But very often this can't be your 1-drop, but it is still instant speed to get a 2/2 body in play. It can't block and it dies after it attacks, but you're still paying 1 mana for a 2/2, and then you're paying 2 mana for a 2/2, so you get 2 bodies on 1 card. And this helps you cast 2 spells in 1 turn if that's what you want to do. It helps you get a lot of bodies to sacrifice if that's what you want to do. It helps remove cards from graveyards if that's what you want to do, which is very likely that you do want to do that. So, I don't know. Like, there's a lot of things I really like about this card. It gives you bodies on the battlefield for whatever reason you might need bodies on the battlefield. It's pretty sweet in like a zombie deck. There's some really cool stuff about this card. I mean, I'm not even done. Like, there's some decks that want to be able to run like instants and sorceries and non-creatures, effectively, that put creatures onto the battlefield. There are plenty of decks that want to do that for whatever reason. Maybe they don't want to hit creatures with their Transmogrify effect or something, so they have to play spells like this. And this is a great spell for decks akin to that. So there's just a lot of really cool stuff about this spell. I like it a lot. Another black 1-drop that's kind of cool is Ecstatic Awakener. This is just a black mana for a 1/1 human wizard. Interesting creature type. There's like no other 1-drop black wizards. Wizard is not a very prevalent creature type in black, but we've gotten a few in this set, so just pointing that out. But anyway, you can pay 2 and a black and sacrifice another creature to draw a card and then transform Awakener. But you can only activate this ability once a turn. I guess so you don't draw a bunch of cards. But anyway, Awoken Demon is just a vanilla 4/4. That's all it is. So you're effectively paying 4 mana and sacking a creature to get a vanilla 4/4. And there are definitely ways that that could be okay. I mean, the 4 mana is paid in installments. You can do it at instant speed. So there's that, I guess. You know, it's not bad. If your opponent points removal at one of your creatures and you have 3 mana open, just pay the 3, sacrifice the dude that's getting the bolt pointed at him or whatever, and now you've got a 4/4. It's not bad. It's just, it's not terrible. Your 1-drop can turn into a 4/4, but there's a couple of this set that kind of, you could say like, oh, your 1-drop turns into a 4/4. Your 3-drop turns into a 6/6. You know, we just saw that legendary black 3-drop with a funny name. Starts with a J. He's on screen right now, but we just saw him the other day, and I'm really tempted to say, like with him, oh, your 3-drop turns into a 6/6, but not really. You don't just pay 3 mana. You pay 3, and then you pay 6 to turn that guy into a 6/6 Flample, Lifelink, whatever he is. This guy, same. You pay 1 mana to get the creature on the battlefield, and then you pay 3 mana to get your 4/4. So again, you're paying 4 mana and a sacrifice creature. Like, you go down on board state to get a 4/4. And I'm just not sure how great that actually is some of the time, but again, certain sacrifice decks that need 1-drops, you know, possibly could find a use for this card. But altogether, I just think it's cool. Again, I said this before, I'm allowed to think cards are cool, and I think this one actually is relatively useful, unlike the last card I said that about. Another cool black card. There are a bunch of those today, actually. This is This is Crawl from the Cellar. I find myself really, really liking this card. It's just a single black mana for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Put a +1/+1 counter on up to one zombie you control, and then you can flash this back for 3 and a black, which I think is the key to this card. On the floor, it's a Raised Dead, which is not a super great floor, but like, Raised Dead is a card I've played in 1995, but I've played Raised Dead in my life and enjoyed it. It's good to have it back, just like way better. We've seen plenty of strictly better Raised Deads in the past. That's not necessarily a rarity, but I like that this is effectively card advantage. This is one card that gets you 2 cards. And that's good. That's typically like fairly good. If you have 5 mana, you can do it all at one time. That might be worth doing sometimes. But either way, one card to get you 2 card. That is effectively card advantage. And in the meantime, you got zombies laying around, which shouldn't be too hard because there's like the Cade in this set. That's a whole thing. Then you get some extra little gravy. It's not worth that. The +1/+1 counter on a zombie is probably worth like a quarter of 1 mana, in terms of the casting cost of this card, but it's still, you'll take the gravy when you can get it, and hey, if your opponent has a bunch of 2/2 zombies and you've got the only 3/3 zombie, that's good, right? So, I don't know. There's just a lot I liked about this card, but if anything, it's just card advantage, and that's always going to be good. But up next, I guess we'll look at Electric Revelation, which sounds like a prog rock album, but instead, it's a magic card. It's 2 and a red for an instant. As an additional cost to cast it, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. You can flash it back for 3 and a red. So it's not Cathartic Reunion. It's not Tormenting Voice. It's not even Thrill of Possibility, which is probably a better card, all things considered. But none of those cards have flashback, and this one does. So I'm kind of a fan just off the rip, right? You can, first of all, one thing I like about this is that when you cast your first Revelation, you can discard a Revelation to it. Right, and then draw your 2 cards, and then later you have both Revelations sitting in your graveyard ready to flash back. Like, this isn't like, I don't know, Faithless Looting. It's not a particularly amazing card, but at least it's instant speed. In a sort of like reanimator-y deck, it's nice to be able to mill this into your yard and still have access to it later too. So, and at instant speed too, I think that matters a lot. So, I don't know, I really like sort of the angles on this card. It looks kind of lame and slow and expensive and not actually that great, especially with the other options that we've seen lately, but I actually think that the versatility on this is super key. And like, you play Thrill of Possibility in reanimation decks already, why not have one that you can access from your graveyard? I think it's a really cool dimension to the card that might actually mean, you know, it sees a little bit of play in a deck from time to time, depending on what that deck is doing and what it wants, because this is actually a pretty cool effect to have handy. Now I want to look at Path to the Festival. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library for a basic land, put the card on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. Then, if there are 3 or more basic land types among lands you control, scry 1, and then you can flash this back for 4 and a green. So, in the Alrund's Epiphany decks, you can ramp on turn 3 and then ramp on turn 5. If that's what you want to do. I think that the fact that you can double up on ramp here is actually pretty important. Although, decks that ramp on 3 and then ramp on 5 haven't really done anything else on those turns. So I'm not sure how good that's going to be some of the time. But against control and maybe the ramp mirror or whatever, you'll have the opening, the window to do this on both turns some of the times. And I think that's actually really cool because, you know, your ramp does not stop at 5 in the current standard. Your ramp stops at 7 or even 8 in some cases, like Magma Opus. So, you know, once you get to 5, you will still want to ramp. And you might even still be trying to fix your mana. Once you do flash this back, I think the chances that you have 3 basic lands in play are very high because you've used this card to get 2 of them. So, you know, it's 2 out of 3. You should be able to come across another basic land at some point. Before you cast this card the second time. And I guess it's possible to get the scry the first time you cast the card too if you cast it on curve. But you're going to have a lot of basic lands in your deck. But, you know, I think the scry is kind of worth it too. You know, being able to ramp into a scry is kind of a big deal, especially if you're looking for the sweeper or whatever. So there's a lot of really sweet things about this card, guys. It kind of looks like a little lower powered at first glance, and ultimately it's not like Cultivate or anything, but I do think that this is a better ramp spell than it appears to be on the surface. But I guess at some point in this video we have to look at Moonrager's Slash, and now's probably a good time. This is 2 and a red for an instant. This spell costs 2 less to cast if it's night. Moonrager's Slash deals 3 damage to any target, so it's a Lightning Bolt is what I'm going to call it. you know, the fact that it's a lightning bolt at night is so intensely good that, and I imagine there's probably going to be play patterns where like it becomes night and you just unload, right? With these, you're able to double spell, like cast a wolf that's on its nightbound side because it's night. So you're getting like really good mana value there. And then you can cast this. In a way, this card is daybound when you think about it. It's a daybound instant, but still, like, again, I think that double spell line is actually really important for the red green werewolves deck, where it becomes night and suddenly you're casting werewolves at this huge mana value, getting 5/5s for like 3 mana or whatever. And you're also able to cast your bolt on top of that if you have the mana. So I don't know. The card is probably really, really good in the werewolves deck, and I can't wait to test it if nothing else. But in the werewolves deck, yeah, you'll play lightning bolt. Given the chance to play lightning bolt, you play it. But I'll take a look at Blood Pact next. This is a really good card in my eyes. Also, I think the art is super metal and awesome. But anyway, this is 3 mana, 2 and a black for an instant. Target player draws 2 cards, loses 2 life. So that's actually very good. It's an instant, guys. This is an instant speed card. There's a mono black control deck right now. I mean, like a blue black control deck will just play like blue card draw. It doesn't necessarily need this, but in that mono black control deck, I could totally see like 1 to 2 copies of this sliding right in. Because if you're looking for the sweeper, you're still looking for the blood on the snow, you're looking for your Loth, your Onyx, or whatever. Your crippling fear for the next turn or something like that. Then this could be great on turn 3. And again, the fact that it's instant speed is just incredible. You can just sit there and like, you know, play at instant speed. If you need to play to the board, you can blow up creatures with removal and stuff like that. And then, the moment you have an opening, you're getting low on cards, boom. Easy. So, I don't know. I know the 2 life looks steep to a lot of people, but trust me, two cards is more than worth 2 life, especially at instant speed. The card is actually a lot better than I think a lot of people are going to think it is. Now, the next few slots on the list, like all the way up to like number 3, I guess, are all kind of populated with creatures that in effect draw cards when they ETB. We saw a bunch of these today, and most of them are common. Eccentric Farmer, I guess, is the one I'll start with. This is 2 and a green for a 2/3 human peasant. When it ETBs, mill 3 cards, and then you may return a land card from your graveyard to your hand. I actually think this is kind of super sweet. You know, it effectively draws you a card when it ETBs, and it mills a couple of cards. It can mill all 3 cards. Right? You might already have a land in your graveyard or something like that, so you just get 3 mills off of this and a free land in your hand, like another Revolving Wilds or something. So, you know, one way or the other, it's a 3 mana creature with not the best body in the world, but 3 toughness at the very least, that effectively draws you a card and gives you extra value in your like self-mill deck. So there are just too many like things that this does that I think it's probably worth playing in like, you know, a janky self-mill standard deck here or there. Now, the next one of these is Search Party Captain. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/2 human soldier. Now, it costs 1 less to cast for each creature you've attacked with this turn. And when it ATBs, you draw a card. That's solid. I mean, I'm not sure that it ends up finding slots in these mono white aggro decks, because I think those decks are really tight right now. And I'm not sure this actually ends up finding a piece. But still, I mean, effectively, a 1 mana 2/2 that ETBs and draws a card, like, where do I go to get that? That seems very, very good to me. Like, in standard, like I'm talking about standard. I've talked about limited with a lot of these cards, but we've slowly been shifting towards standard. And again, that mono white list is so tight that I'm not sure this is quite worth the slot, but a 1 mana 2/2 that draws 2. Come on. It seems good enough in a lot of ways. Even a 2 mana 2/2 that draws a card. A 3 mana 2/2 that draws a card is kind of fine. When you think about it, it's not bad. You know, but a 2 mana 2/2 that draws a card is great. And a 1 mana 2/2 that draws a card is just outright banana bread. So, like, yeah, I'm fan of that. But I think we'll move on to Shipwreck Sifters, the next one of these draw a card when it ETBs creatures. Although this one is just always going to straight up ETB draw you a card, and you don't have to jump through hoops to reduce its casting cost or anything. Sifters is 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/2 spirit. When it ETBs, draw a card, then discard a card. Whenever you discard a spirit card or a card with Disturb, put a +1/+1 counter on Sifters. So the fact that this is a 2 mana body that draws and loots when it ETBs is kind of it's good enough, even if it never gets a counter on it. Like, it's kind of okay. It's good in Reanimator decks. It's just good in any deck that wants bodies and to churn through its deck a little bit faster. Just 2-mana dude that loots when it ETBs, like, I'll kind of take that. It's just kind of good enough. But now we are in the last 4 cards of the day, ladies and gentlemen, and for, I guess, number 4, we'll look at Tapping at the Window. Is this the first Magic card that's had tapping in the name? Fun fact, Tapping at the Window is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a sorcery. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it into your hand, put the rest into your graveyard. So this, really cool. Wish it was instant speed, but I don't have a whole lot of time to bellyache about that. I actually think this card is really sweet. It's not quite Mulch or Grim Harvest or like anything like, Grizzly Salvage. Is that the thing I'm thinking of? Grizzly Salvage? Great card. It's not those cards. It's not quite the gas some of these like self-mill decks needed, but it is something that will help you find the combo creature or other important bodies that you might need, while also fueling those really important graveyard synergies. So, big fan of this. I like cards like this, and this is no exception. But we've hit the top 3. We've finally done it, you and I together, and let's go ahead and look at what I think is the third, not necessarily the third best card of the day, but it is the third to last card I want to look at. Let's take a look at Lunar Veteran here, which is also Luminous Phantom, in case you wanted to know. Lunar Veteran is just 1 white mana for a 1/1 human cleric, cool creature type. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. Now you can disturb, that's the text on the card. It's a soul, it's not quite a Soul Warden, but it's in the Soul Sisters group. It's a Soul Grandpa, I guess. It looks like an older guy, but anyway. You can disturb this for 1 and a white, in which case it becomes a 1/1 spirit cleric with flying, and whenever another creature you control leaves the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Now, if this would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, you exile it instead. That's the disturb creature ability clause. It's on all of them. But anyway, yeah, again, Soul, it's a kind of a Soul Warden. It's one of those. It's one of those. And it's in Standard, and it has the correct creature type to go in the deck that you want it to go in. And it disturbs for only 2 mana and gains you more life after it disturbs. Like, this is great. And it flies too. Like, God, yeah, man. Like, the second half of it flies at least. That's just all, like, so good. It's a cleric on both halves too. So in your cleric's deck, it's always going to have, like, some sort of, reason to be out. It'll get boosted by all your cleric stuff. So just, I don't know. Just a super, super sweet card right here that could see play in multiple formats. Obviously, this is pauper playable, as are some of the other cards I think we've already looked at today. And the next card we'll look at is also very pauper playable too, just so you know. But this is just something to really get excited about. This is easily one of the best cards of the day, period. And again, maybe even one of the better looking cards in the set. This could end up in multiple decks, not just clerics decks, not just life gain decks, but even like mono white aggro decks, because of the fact that it disturbs so cheaply. So, there's a ton of decks that might want this, and I just think it's one of the most well-designed and just most hype cards of all 277 that we've seen in this set. Honestly, I think I like it more than our number 2 card, because I'm actually a little bit scared of our number 2 card. I think that it's kind of giving me hot sweats that Cathar Commando even exists. This is 1 and a white for a 3/1 human soldier with inexplicable flash. Somebody on Twitter said it's because no one expects the Spanish Inquisition. You get a star, my friend. But this 2 mana 3/1 has flash in white for some reason. And you can pay 1 and sacrifice it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. That's bonkers. It's so good. I mean, it's got a pretty decent stat line in and of itself. 2 mana 3/1 flash. Blackland's Paragon wasn't the most played card in the format or anything, but it saw niche play from time to time. So I like this stat line. I think it's especially interesting in white, where you really don't expect, a flash creature. And you could flash this guy in and block, and then, before damage goes through, you just sacrifice it and blow up an artifact or an enchantment or something. So you're able to get a block down and blow something up, like for just 3 mana, add instant speed. Again, it has flash. If the card didn't have flash, it would still be fine, but it has flash, so it's like 5 stars. Could be rare, but is somehow common. Again, this will affect the pauper format and probably the standard format and beyond too. Like, this is just kind of an unbelievable card for the rate. It's incredible in best of one. It frees up sideboard slots in best of three, so you don't have to like worry as much about covering for permanent types you otherwise don't have like ways to kill. This makes every artifact and enchantment in the whole format like a little bit worse, just by itself, which I don't love, to be honest. But just a sick card on like so many levels that like again, I would not be surprised if this had been rare. I would be, oh yeah, that makes sense at rare. But no, this card's a common. It's just, is that nuts to anybody else? Does anybody else this kind of look like one of the best cards in the set? Like unironically, it's very good. But the last card we'll look at today is decidedly not the best card of the day, but it is the only rare. Well, actually, it's the only mythic. Screw rares. We didn't see any rares today. Rares are for chumps. This is the only mythic of the day, or of the last 24 hours, I should say. It's also just a really freaking cool card. We got to see Lord of the Forsaken last night. This is 6 mana, 4 and 2 black for a 6/6 demon with Flample, and you can pay a black and sack a creature to have target player mill 3 cards. You can also pay 1 life. It just keeps going. You can pay 1 life to add a colorless mana, but you can spend this mana only to cast a spell from your graveyard. Alright, so I know I've already done this bit on Twitter, but stick with me if you will. So this is a Lord of the Pit callback, which is awesome. So I love the reference. I see what you're doing. But also, this is awesome for Reanimator decks in a couple of different ways. It's self-mill. It mills opponents if that's what you want it to do. If you have a whole bunch of decayed zombies out or something like that. Just sacrifice them one by one and mill your opponent out for the memes. I guess that's fun. But also, of course, you can self-mill yourself in a Reanimator deck and have more cool Reanimator targets, more cool flashback targets and stuff like that, so that's really sweet. When you do go to cast those flashback and disturb cards out of your graveyard, they cost way less to cast if you're willing to throw some life at them. The cost reduction on this actually seems fairly dangerous. Life for mana in the past has been a really, really good trade. It only gives you colorless mana. That kind of sucks. And you probably have to go through a pretty decent investment whether you're reanimating it or not to get it onto the table in the first place. So who knows if you're going to have a whole lot of life to spend at that point in the game. There are some built-in problems with the card, namely that it's 6 mana. Like, 6 mana is a lot for a card that probably isn't going to do a whole heck of a lot for you the turn that it DTBs. So, like, there are some natural constraints to the card that make it not necessarily, like, super constructed worthy, but if you can get this card down quickly enough and fill your graveyard fast enough, it's definitely a really, really dangerous card. And time will tell if it ends up seeing any real play or not. Again, the casting cost is just really prohibitive, which is to suck because the card is so awesome. But once you do get the card down, if you've been able to set things up correctly, it can do some really nasty stuff, man. Pays off Aristocrats deck, pays off like sacrifice strategies and stuff like that. It's a relatively cheap sack outlet. Again, cost reducer. That's just none of what the card says is bad in my estimation. And in the meantime, 6 mana, 6/6 flying trample. Like just on stats alone, that's kind of fine. So just kind of in love with the card, even though I'm, again, pragmatic. I'm objective. I don't think that it's a super like standard playable card or anything, but I just think that somebody pointed this out on Twitter earlier, and I think they might have something here. It looks like they just went through this set and they're like, what would Dev like? What are some cards that Dev would like? So they made like the Meat Hook Massacre. They made Can't Stay Away. They made this card. Like a couple of other things. I really think they've catered to the Dev demographic on a few cards in the set. What is it? Flesh Taker or whatever it's called. The Orzhov 2-drop that's a slasher villain. Like, pump that between my toes. Like right now, shoot it directly into my toe veins. There's some cards in the set that are very Dev in a lot of ways, and this is definitely one of them. So I just appreciate the card existing, and I want to try to do some cool stuff with it. But it's probably bad. Shut up. It's probably bad. I know it's not good. Whatever. It's not good. Let me just let people have fun. Can people have some fun around here for a change? But that's my list for the final day. Again, if you wanted to see all of the cards from today, even like the crap, most of it's crap. I'm gonna warn you. I'll link in the description to Mythic Spoiler, but you'll also find links in the description. I was gonna say links in the Destroyer. Why? You'll find links in the description down there to not only the Twitch channel, but the Patreon as well if you want to help out. And you'll find links to every single spoiler video we've done for the season so far. If you want to just put those on in order, it's whatever you want to do. Help the channel out. Give me that watch time. That sweet, delicious watch time. I want to drink it. But anyway, That's all I got for this one. Just let me know how you felt in the comments section down there. Anything that I missed, any interactions I didn't hit, any cards I didn't bring up that are just like going to rule 3 different environments for like a year and a half, and I missed it somehow, you know, just if that happened, let me know in the comment section down there. We'll talk about it. But aside from that, again, YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, all these things. And I'm going to edit this video, and then I'm going to take a big old nap. Well, I'm probably going to watch SmackDown. And then I'm going to take a very, very long nap. And then I'm going to stream tomorrow, and then we're going to do top 10 sleepers. I have things to do. I can't sleep yet. But I'm going to try. Anyway, I don't know if you caught the 3 seconds of existential dread there. But anyway, I love you all. I am Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, my wizards. Spread love and be kind.